Hi guys, welcome to today's tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the difference between gold flakes and leaf sheets. As a resin artist, these two things are things you are going to be hearing too much and actually be working with them in the creation of pieces like what I'm showing you here in the video and so many other items. So, first of all, this one here is what we call the gold flakes and this one is what we call the leaf sheets. The leaf sheets are actually available in more colors as compared to the gold flakes, which is basically mostly available in just three colors: gold, silver, and rose gold. For this tutorial, we are going to be needing a simple silicone mold with multiple cavities. The next item we'll be needing is the gold flakes that we are also going to be using for the demonstration, and the leaf sheets as well. Next, we'll be needing some measuring cups for measuring and mixing of the resin, and we'll also be needing the mixing sticks we'll be using for stirring. We will be needing the resin and hardener. We cannot do this project without. Next item on today's project list is the lighter we'll be using to pop in any bubbles that come into the. We will also be needing some tweezers, and then we'll also be needing some disposable gloves for protecting the skin. So anytime you're working with resin, since it's a chemical, you always need to put on some gloves to protect your skin from the chemical, okay? So you always have to make sure you wear gloves on both hands. Do not wear it on just one hand, or don't even consider not wearing the gloves at all. So once that was done, we are just going to prep the space and then move right into the project. For today's tutorial, I'm actually going to be mixing a larger quantity of resin because I was actually going to be using the same quantity or the leftover quantity for another tutorial, and I didn't want to just be wasting so much time doing them all over again. And because we have already discussed the ratios and how they are supposed to be mixed in the previous video, we are just going to move straight into pouring the chemical and mixing. So because this is a 2-to-1 ratio, I poured 150 ml of resin, and then I added 75 ml of hardener. Once that was done, I just prepped the stick I was going to use for the stirring by just using some wet wipes to just clean it. The reason I just clean them all the time is to try as much as possible to get rid of any little dust particles or filth that may be on the stick, which we do not want to have in the resin. So one thing about your mixing sticks or your choice of mixing sticks is that there are actually two main types of mixing sticks. There's a silicone and then there's a wooden one. So with the wooden one, you cannot get rid of any hardened or cured resin that stays on the wood, okay? But unlike the wooden one, we have the silicone one, which you can just turn or squeeze or whatever, and then you'll be able to peel off any cured resin that stays on the silicone spatula, okay? So that's basically that. So once that was demonstrated, I went right into mixing the chemicals. So you realize that the resin has become foggy, and because it's foggy, you cannot even see the base of the mixing stick in the cup. It's so foggy, and then the basic reason why it's foggy is that the resin and hardener have all started to react with each other, and that's perfectly normal. So you're just going to do a mix for about 8 to 10 minutes. Even after it looks clear like water, we are still going to make sure we reach that time so that we are very sure of ourselves that the resin and hardener has been well mixed. So because we do not want to waste too much time on the video, I'm going to do most of the mixing off camera, and then once we are done with that, we are going to add in the items, or we're going to divide the resin into the various cups and add in the leaf sheets and the gold flakes. One thing you should always bear in mind whenever you are mixing your resin is that you always have to scrape the sides of the cup while stirring, okay? So while stirring, you just give a neat scraping of the sides of the cup and the bottom of the cup. This way, any resin that is attached or still stuck on the walls of the cup will also just be added into the liquid, and then we'll just mix them all entirely together. Here you can see that now you can clearly see the bottom of the mixing stick in the mixture because it is now well mixed and ready for division. So I'm going to pour a reasonable quantity into the first silicone cup and another quantity into the second cup, just to be able to demonstrate the effects of both leaf sheets and gold flakes in each liquid. So whenever you are working with these cups, you should always be mindful of cleaning them before working with them. So I'm going to start with the gold flakes. I'm going to use the tweezers. But before that, I want you to see how the texture of the item is. So this is how the gold flakes looks like. And with the leaf sheet, it comes packed in some sheets of paper. And this is how it looks. You can clearly tell that the leaf sheet is glossier or shinier than the gold flakes. So I'm going to use the tweezers to pick a sample of the gold flakes so you see one thing about it. So with the gold flakes, it's actually a more solid item. You can realize that even after rubbing it between my fingers, it's not really tearing that much. It's actually more solid or stronger than the leaf sheets. And the leaf sheets, on the other hand, I'm also getting a little sample here. And with the sample I've grabbed, you realize that once you start to rub the leaf sheets between your fingers, the leaf sheet tears easily, okay? It's actually softer and more easy to work with as compared to the gold flakes. So this is one of the main characteristics that actually tells the difference between these two items. So I'm going to start by working with the gold flakes. This is the resin I'm going to be using for working with the gold flakes. So with the help of the tweezers like we did initially when we were trying to get a sample to see how strong or soft or how hard or soft the item is, I use the tweezers, yes. So this time round, I also am going to use the tweezers again to pick a reasonable quantity or a quantity I would like to work with and then dip them into the liquid. Okay, so I just grabbed a few more of it with the tweezers again. Honestly, I don't really like working with tweezers. I find it very annoying, but I mean, it's actually a tool that's actually very, very helpful. You can see the flakes didn't even want to get off the tweezers. Don't mind that they will fall out eventually. And one trick is that you try and let it touch the liquid whenever you are dipping it into it. Okay. When it touches the liquid or the resin, it will just adhere to the liquid and that's all. Good. So once that was done, I wiped my tweezers and also put that aside and then moved on to adding the leaf sheets to the second liquid. So one trick about adding leaf sheets to your resin is that you have to first of all try and wet the stick you are going to use. Okay, the leaf sheets are actually very lightweight, and then they can just all just get blown away by the wind. So when you wet the tip of the mixing stick, you just tap the surface and roll, and that's all. Okay. So once that was also gotten into the cup, I just put away the sheets and then I started to mix. To make the job easier, I just got a different mixing stick for the gold flakes and then I just started to mix it into the liquid. The main idea behind working with the gold flakes is that it's supposed to tear into tiny bits or tiny pieces to give it the effect we are looking for. But because the gold flakes is actually solid, you're going to struggle with getting that kind of effect and it's going to be more lumpy in the mixture. Okay, so with that done or with that mixed in, I'm going to use the mixing stick to scoop some few quantity of the gold flakes into the mold. Okay, so with the gold flakes, whenever you are working with it, you should try as much as possible to make sure it lies flat within the liquid you are working with. If it doesn't lie flat within the liquid and you find it poking out of the chemical, what happens is that when the resin cures, you're going to get that same effect with your project. Okay, you realize that the gold flakes will still be poking outside even after the resin had cured completely. So once we were done with pouring that into the mold, I went on to mixing in the leaf sheets. You realize it's much easier. Immediately you start to give it a stir, it just surrenders. Okay, it will just surrender and it will just tear into little bits and give you the best effect you can ever look out for. The gold flakes, on the other hand, will still be lumpy in the liquid and it doesn't really make the job look very nice. You realize with the leaf sheets it's also actually shinier, and with that you can easily just pour into the mold. You don't really need the mixing stick to help you to do that. Okay, so you see how easy it flows out of the cup into the mold that we are working with, and that's the best effect you can ever look out for whenever you are trying to add these type of fillings to your project. So gold flakes are actually a type of resin craft filling. Okay, when I say filling, fillings are basically items you can put into your project to give it some kind of effect or some kind of design. Okay, and because gold flakes give the resin its own unique design, it's also categorized as a filling. There are different types of fillings, but for today's tutorial, we are only working with these two. So I proceeded to pour the rest of the resin into the other cavities of the mold, and there was still some left over, so I got a separate mold and did the same for that as well. So when working with your leaf sheets or your gold flakes, you can actually play around with the quantity you want. So you realize that for the previous mold, the initial pours of flakes or leaf sheets had more of the flakes in it, but the remaining two just had a little quantity. Okay, so depending on how much you want the flakes or the leaf sheets to be in the project, you just work around that and just be playful with it. Okay, don't let resin art seem like a stressful craft to you. You're just trying to experiment and try and just give it a little bit of flair, that's all. So I moved on to pouring into the mold. I added all the resin that was in the cup into the different cavities just to create more things with the rest of the resin and not having to waste them. Anytime you're working with resin, having leftover resin is actually very normal. Anytime you do get in leftover resin, you just have to make sure you do something pretty with it. You will never know when you will need an addition of something different you did in it, an extra or a previous project into a current project you are working on. Okay, so once that was done, I used the lighter to pop the bubbles. So when you're working with your lighter, you can always lock it. Okay, so when you push down the button, you push to lock. That way you can leave it and the flame will still be on the lighter while passing it over the surface of the mold. So once that was done, I left it to sit in the mold to cure for a full 24 hours. Once the 24 hours were also up, it was now solid enough for me to be able to demold from the mold I used in making them. So it was solid enough. It's now a solid plastic. This is the effects we are looking for with creating these pieces. So I started by demolding the first butterfly shape with the gold flakes, and also demolded one of the ones I made with the leaf sheets. So you can clearly tell the difference between the two. The one with the leaf sheets is actually shinier than the one with the gold flakes. And with the gold flakes, because it's actually very solid, some of the flakes were poking out of the liquid and they cured and still left that effect on it. This is normal with working with gold flakes. You just have to try and push it into the liquid and leave it to cure in a flat motion or manner. Um, but that's basically it. You realize that it's not really shiny, it actually has a dull effect. But the leaf sheets, on the other hand, are actually more shiny and prettier. They give a more colorful effect. You realize how pretty that one is. So after demolding, you're going to move on to adding the key rings to the pieces you have just made. And for that to be successful, you are going to need some few items. You're going to need some jump rings. You're also going to need some Eyescrews, and you're going to need the key rings as well. Next, you're going to need some pliers. You are okay if you are good with using one, but if you are not good with that, you can use two pliers. Also, you are going to need a drill. I always advise you work with an electric drill. It comes with a button that you can press to turn it on or off. So once the button is pressed, after it's connected to power, you can drill the piece just where you want to. Before you drill the key chain or the resin piece you have made, you need to be mindful of the size or the depth with which you are going to use to drill. So whenever a hole is drilled in the key chain, the item you place into it after it has been drilled is what we call the eye screw. So the eye screw is this little pin here, and if you cross check or you try and check with the drill, you realize it's not so long. So you're basically going to use your imagination to tell how deep you are going to drill the piece to be able to successfully put the eye screw in. So for this shape, I was contemplating on the side of the butterfly wing I was going to drill. I decided to drill the left side. So I'm just going to use the drill here to drill a short depth on each of the key rings, just one hole per keychain. And then from there, I'm going to proceed with the whole process. So once that was done, I picked one eye screw I was going to screw into the hole that had already been drilled, and you're just going to turn it around in it, just trying to screw it into it. One method of doing the screwing process is to use a pin like that of the electric drill. You just place it through the eye of the screw and turn around. Another process is to use the plier, okay? But personally, I do not recommend you always use a plier. But in case you do, you should be very careful because the eye screw is not actually a very solid metal. So being a strong plier, it can just break it into the piece and just destroy the entire process. So now we are going to move on to the jump ring. So the jump ring is a little ring that connects the eye screw to the key ring. And if you look closely, you realize that it's a split on one end. There's a line dividing it on one end, okay? So that's where we are going to use for the division. So with two pliers, that's if you're working with two, you hold both ends of the jump ring, press hard with the plier, and just push them in opposite direction to split it. Once it splits, you're going to pass it through the eye of the eye screw and add the last ring of the key ring to it. And again with the plier, you hold both ends of the jump ring and then you close them together. I always advise my students and anyone I have the chance to advise to always try as much as possible to overlap the jump ring. That way the key ring doesn't come off easily. And now we are done with the first part, which was done with the gold leaf sheet. So we are basically going to repeat the same process on the butterfly shape that was done with the gold flakes. Just get some jump rings. For now we only need one, not too many. You select a jump ring. Once you're done with that, you, with the help of your plier or your pliers, with this I'm just using one plier. So the trick with one plier is to put the jump ring on the plier and split the plier, and it's going to open it. So once it's open, you're going to pass it through the eye of the eye screw, add the last key ring, or sorry, the last hole of the key ring, and just close it. And you are done as soon as you start. So it's as simple as this. It's not difficult at all when working with the pliers and adding the key rings to the piece or the resin piece you have made. So this is a simple tutorial on how to make these beautiful items and how to easily tell the difference between gold flakes and leaf sheets. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial, and I really do hope you were able to recreate the same pieces I did here in the video. Don't forget to like, comment, share this video and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you in the next tutorial. Bye.